In the heart of Bavaria, back in 1922, imagine a place even more remote than you're thinking. A tiny, isolated farmstead nestled between these dark, frozen forests and empty, windswept farmlands. A place where the silence could swallow you whole. Its name? Hinterkaifeck. Sounds like something out of a ghost story, right? You won't find it on many maps today. The land is quiet now, just tall, swaying grass, the whispering of ancient trees, and the lonely sigh of the wind. Nature has reclaimed it. But back then, in 1922, this forgotten corner of Germany became the site of something truly disturbing. One of the most baffling and unsolved crimes in history. A real-life horror story that still gives people the chills. Began with footprints in the snow. Simple as that. March 31st. The air was biting, that sharp, cold air that gets right into your lungs. A thick blanket of fresh snow covered everything around Hinterkaifeck, making the landscape look both beautiful and desolate. And in that pristine snow were footsteps. One set, leading straight toward the isolated farmhouse. But here's the kicker, not a single set led away. Think about that for a second. Someone went in, but nobody walked out. Andreas Gruber, the old man who headed the family, had been on edge for days, complaining to anyone who would listen about some seriously strange goings-on around the farm. Footsteps. In the attic when nobody was up there. Heavy footsteps like someone was pacing around. A missing set of house keys that just vanished off the hook. And a newspaper he didn't recognize, just lying on the kitchen table like it had appeared out of nowhere. Even the maid, the poor woman, had packed her bags and quit suddenly, saying the house felt haunted. Gave her the creeps so bad she couldn't sleep. Andreas, being a stubborn farmer, dismissed it all as nonsense, just his old mind playing tricks. But something, was already inside that house, waiting in the shadows. That night, while the family slept, something, or someone, moved silently in the darkness. Emerged from the hidden spaces of that old farmhouse, likely from the dusty, forgotten attic. What happened next was pure, brutal horror. The kind that makes you sick to your stomach just thinking about it. One by one, the family members were lured from the safety of their beds into the cold, dark barn. Andreas, his wife Cecilia, their grown daughter Victoria and her two young children, little Cecilia and Joseph. They were each slaughtered, not with a quick shot or a clean cut, but with a pickaxe, that brutal farm tool. Imagine the terror, the screams. Their bodies were found stacked in the barn, thrown on top of each other like they were nothing more than old, broken furniture. A gruesome, horrifying pile. The killer, whoever it was, then calmly entered the farmhouse and finished the job. The final victim? The new maid. She'd only started working that very morning, poor woman. Walked into a nightmare she couldn't have possibly imagined. But here's where it gets even weirder, even more disturbing. This wasn't a smash and grab. The killer didn't just do the unthinkable and flee into the night. He stayed on the farm for days, living miles away but still close enough to notice things. Saw smoke lazily drifting from the chimney of the Gruber place. The livestock, the cows and chickens were being fed and watered like normal. Meals were cooked and eaten inside that house of horrors. Someone was living there. Even the family dog was being cared for. Someone was still walking it, making sure it had food and water. The murderer lived among the corpses, slept in that house alongside the bodies of the people they had just brutally murdered, ate meals in the same room where they had likely planned their attack. Waited. For what? That's the question that's haunted investigators for decades. When the mailman finally raised the alarm, days later, after not seeing any of the family for a while, the horror they discovered was beyond anything anyone could have imagined. The scene in that barn. It was a bloodbath. The police, when they finally arrived at that isolated farmstead, began the grueling investigation. Suspects were questioned, dozens of them, everyone who had ever had a grudge against the Grubers. Victoria's ex-lovers, some who hadn't taken the breakup well, angry neighbors who had argued over property lines, even the old maid who had quit, her sudden departure looking suspicious, in hindsight, but nothing ever quite fit. Nobody had a solid motive. Nobody had a believable alibi that completely ruled them out. The murder weapon, that brutal pickaxe, was eventually found. Buried in the hay in the attic, hidden away. Yet, despite all the blood, no fingerprints were ever found on it. Not a single. One. No motive that made any real sense ever surfaced. Why kill the entire family, including the young children and the maid? It was senseless, brutal, and deeply, deeply disturbing. Years turned into decades. Leads went cold. Suspects died without ever confessing. The case just faded into the background, another unsolved mystery gathering dust in the archives. Then, in 2007, a staggering 85 years later, a group of forensic students, fascinated by the cold case, reopened the investigation with modern techniques. They even named a suspect based on their analysis of the evidence and witness testimonies from the time. But they refused to make that suspect public. Why keep it secret after all this time? They said there was simply no physical evidence left to definitively link anyone to the crime. Only shadows of suspicion. And perhaps something darker at play in that forgotten farmhouse. To this day, the Hinterkaifeck Murders remain one of Germany's most chilling unsolved mysteries. No arrests were ever made. No confessions ever given. No real closure for the families left behind or for the town that tried to forget. Just a small, isolated farmstead, long since demolished, the buildings torn down, the wood scattered, and a quiet field where 6 innocent souls still scream in silence, their story a haunting echo in the Bavarian countryside. Sometimes the scariest part of a story isn't the gruesome details of the crime itself. It's the cold, hard fact that someone got away with it, vanished into the shadows, leaving behind only questions and a lingering sense of pure, unadulterated fear.